Candidate Debate, 2022, Democratic Primary, 113th PA House District, recorded May 9, 2022. Be an informed voter by attending candidate debates, co-sponsored by the University of Scranton, Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service, and by League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. Making Democracy Work, Grassroots Leadership since 1920.
Welcome to the debate for candidates running for the Democratic primary for the 113th Pennsylvania State House District. I'm Dr. Jean Harris. I teach here at the University of Scranton. I'm also the co-director of the university's Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service and a member of the League of Women Voters, and I will be the moderator for this evening. So this evening's debate is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the University of Scranton Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. The university and the League are both nonprofit organizations that do not endorse candidates or support candidates. They provide civic education events, fostering understanding of our governments and encouraging civic participation. First, some rules for the audience. So we ask that you turn off your phones, or at least put it on silent so that we're not interrupted. I think I did mine already. We also ask that you refrain from expressions of support, approval, or disapproval during the debate. And we remind you that the sponsors, myself and members of the League, we retain the right to request that anyone being disruptive to the proceedings leave the premises. Just a quick audio-visual policy. This debate will be recorded for broadcast on ECTV and posted on YouTube that you can get to from the League of Women Voters website, and the link is in the program that we gave you, or the Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service website. That link is there as well. No unauthorized audio or video recording or streaming of this event is allowed. Media coverage requires the approval of the Center and the League. An audio video must be broadcast in its entirety except by legitimate reporting on the event. How we will proceed for the evening, the candidates are sitting alphabetically. They will get the same questions. They have not had the questions before I asked them this evening, so they have no prior knowledge of the questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Also the opportunity for 3 one-minute rebuttals if they choose to use those. The questions were developed by the director and co-director of the center, as well as members of the League of Women Voters. I will introduce each candidate. There'll be no candidate opening statements, but each candidate will have the opportunity to make a closing statement. And at that point will be the time that you can applaud the candidates. So at this point, what I would like to do is introduce our candidates. First, we have Kyle Donahue. His education is from Bishop Hannon High School, and he attended Temple University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in political science and communication and a minor in history. His political experience includes being a director on the Scranton School Board, a member of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party's State Committee, a member of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party's Executive Committee, a candidate for Scranton City Controller in 2015, Scranton City Council member from 2018 to present, and he's currently serving as council president, member of the Lackawanna County Democratic Committee, and a candidate for mayor of Scranton in 2019. His civic experience includes a member of the board of directors for Scranton-Lackawanna Human Development Agency. He is currently an executive director of finance for the St. Patrick's Day Parade Association in Lackawanna County, a current member of the executive committee of the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick here in Lackawanna County, and also a current member of Scranton Tomorrow. His professional experience include a business and political consultant, which is his current occupation. He's self-employed. He was a campaign manager for Vinsco for Congress. He was deputy political director for Carney for Congress, deputy campaign manager for Udachik for State Senate. I know I mispronounced that. And assistant treasurer for Citizens for Biden. Joining us tonight also is Patrick Kerrigan Flynn. His education includes attending schools in Grove City Area School District, and he also attended Kent State University. His civic experience includes a board member for the Council of SEPA, is that how you pronounce that? Bucks County, founder of Someone You Know Associate Group at Independence Blue Cross. This is a group to break the stigma of addiction in the corporate setting. A co-founder and volunteer for the Project Manifesto, and that is a nonprofit organization that helps individuals mentor persons in recovery to get back into life-sustaining careers. And his professional experience, he has been a government affairs specialist for Independence Blue Cross from 2015 to 2022. So earlier this evening, about 5 minutes ago, we drew numbers to determine who would get the first question first, and then we'll rotate between the two candidates with questions. And Kyle got the number on that, so he will answer the first question first. And then we also drew for who would get their closing statement first. And Patrick got the number one on that. So we're going to start first question first with Kyle, and then move from there. So the first question. Why should registered Democrats come out on May 17th and vote for you to be the Democratic nominee for the 113th Pennsylvania House District position?
Thank you, Dr. Harris, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and also the Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service for hosting tonight's debate. I'm running for state rep. Well, first off, when I first ran for public office, I always ran with the motivation to make this area better for the next generation. That motivation's only grown since the birth of our daughter last April. And we're actually expecting another one. So my motivation just keeps continuing to grow. As I have firsthand knowledge of how local government works, first off on the school board, how a lack of fair funding negatively impacts our students on a day-to-day basis. I have firsthand knowledge of city government, how state law negatively impacts the city of Scranton, especially when it comes to nonprofits and also the laws that govern how municipalities operate. The city uses 2A status when it benefits us. The city uses the home rule law when it benefits us. And really, I think in the state of Pennsylvania, we need to really give every city the tools they need to be successful. My main issue is fair funding for public education. Scranton School District is underfunded by about $42 million a year. And then the North Pocono School District's actually also underfunded by about $3.7 million a year. And I think we've been making progress on the city's front, but if the school district goes in the opposite direction, that's not good for us, and that's what I want to go to Harrisburg and fight for.
Thank you, Kyle. The same question for you, Patrick. Why should registered Democrats come out on May 17th and vote for you to be the Democratic nominee for the 113th House District?
First off, thank you so much for moderating this debate. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting it on the University of Scranton. I really love seeing the students out there getting engaged in the political process. It's something that I loved my whole life, getting involved in it, so it's really great to see students here getting involved in the political process. But for me, it's about our community. It's not about me, it's about the community, and it's about my belief in this community. Having a civic mind and believing that we have to leave our community a better place than how we found it. And I believe that my work experience and my professional experience guided me to a point where I could finally give that back. And for the past 7 years, I've been a government affairs specialist at Independence Blue Cross, where I worked intimately with the state government, with legislators, with regulators, with staff, also the federal government and local governments that all at some point cross paths to work to better our areas, right? And I have an intimate knowledge of the issues that face Pennsylvania, face this area on a daily basis, but also I've worked hard to get things done. I don't rest on my laurels, and I believe that, every single day we have to do more and more to help our area, to help our communities. When I saw barriers that I thought could not be broken through, I shattered through them. When at the company I worked for, they had associate resource groups and affinity groups for all different types of individuals, but none for anyone who has ever been affected by the disease of addiction. When you have mothers that are going to work every day and seeing that they can't get their work done because they're worried about where their child is, and et cetera, I saw that as a real opening to start breaking the stigma of addiction in the corporate workplace, and I got that done. I got that group started, the first of its kind in the country. So I don't just talk about the problems, I go and I solve them and find ways to solve them. And that is what I will bring to Harrisburg for the residents of the 113th District on a daily basis.
Thank you, Patrick. The second question will go to Patrick first. We're going to talk a little bit about government, good government. So the first deals with term limits. One of several proposals to enact term limits for state legislators would limit service to 12 consecutive years. That is 6 terms in the PA House and 3 terms in the PA's Senate. Some proposals also grandfather current members, which would allow them to 12 more years after the term limit actually goes into effect. And that grandfathering is typically added to get the votes they need to pass something like this. So my first question, and this is just a yes or no, if elected, will you support enacting a term limit for state legislators? Patrick.
Well, it's more caveated, but I'll say no and then give you my rationale.
Okay, and I'll give you that opportunity. Kyle.
Yes.
Okay, so Patrick, my next question then is, if no, why not?
Because we are the term limits. The voters are the term limits. Every 2 years at the ballot box, you could terminate someone's employment with the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives. We need to be there, but when you put people in a position where they're term limited like that, you're pigeonholing them. So I believe that it's our duty, if we don't believe in the work that a legislator is doing, that we need to get to the ballot box and we need to impose the term limits.
Thank you. So Kyle, why would you agree to term limits, and what's the benefit, and what would the limit be in your mind, and would it be grandfathered as well?
So I believe, I agree with Pat that we are the term limits, but at the same time, once you get entrenched politicians constantly and staying in office for eternity, it seems like sometimes we don't get fresh perspectives. I think we need as many fresh perspectives as possible in state government, especially with the legislature being as large as it is. And I think the 12 years would be a good number to go there.
Thank you. The next question deals with no excuse mail voting, and this one will go to Kyle first. In 2019, Pennsylvania State Legislature approved Act 77 with bipartisan support, and Governor Wolf signed it into law. This law instituted no excuse mail voting. Now state legislators, including many who voted to approve Act 77, want it repealed. So the question is, if elected, would you fight to retain Act 77's no excuse mail voting? And please provide a rationale for your position on this matter.
Yes, I would preserve that. I think that we need to open up the process to as many people as possible. I also think we need some more progressive changes to our electoral system, especially open primaries. I don't believe that we should be disenfranchising anybody that registers as a third party or a different party than being a Democrat and Republican in our primary system, especially in places like the city of Scranton, where usually the primary is the deciding factor. So I think we need to open up our primaries there. I also, we need to provide county election bureaus with the resources to actually undertake elections. And I'm also in favor of automatic voter registration.
Thank you, Kyle. The same question to you, Patrick. If elected, would you fight to retain Act 77's no excuse mail voting, and please provide a rationale?
Yes, I absolutely would. And I agree with Kyle that we need to preserve this law. We need to make voting as accessible to every Pennsylvanian as we possibly can. And that also includes open primaries. And I believe that with an open primary, it's not so much about the primary in the city of Scranton or anything like that. It's about the fact that we have all these independent-minded people who aren't able to get out in a primary election, and that's why you see a lot of times in big statewide elections, more extremists on both sides of the aisle being elected in primary elections and not having the thought-provoking leaders that we need getting to the general election, because fringe elements are winning in the primaries because we don't have an opportunity to elect those people through an open primary system. I believe that we're one of maybe 6 or 7 states in the country that doesn't have an open primary system, and that's something that we drastically need to change immediately. But you know, as far as it goes with some of those members that are now opposed to Act 77, you know, they got what they wanted at that time, right, but didn't understand that opening up mail-in balloting wouldn't be good for their political party, but it's good for Pennsylvania. So anything that's good for Pennsylvania, I would love to preserve, I would work hard to preserve, and I would do that on a daily basis.
Thank you. The next question will go to Patrick first, and this deals with legislative rules. At the beginning of each legislative session, legislators adopt rules by which the body, standing committees, and members will function. Current rules in the PA House delegate to the majority party chairperson of each standing committee the possibility of deciding what bills will be brought up for discussion to the committee. If a bill is discussed by committee and brought out to the floor and sent to the House, the Speaker of the House and the House Majority Leader have the authority to determine whether the bill gets a floor vote in the full chamber. The question is, if elected, will you vote to continue rules that give 3 people in the House so much authority over what proposed bills are discussed, deliberated, and brought to a vote? And please provide a rationale for your answer.
So I would not support that, and I have 2 words why, and it's a gentleman named Darrell Metcalf, and he's a state representative of the Republican Party who is the chairman of the State Government Committee. And his claim to fame, so he says, is that through his tenure as chairman of this committee, he has never allowed a Democratic bill out of committee. A lot of really good bills that could help Pennsylvanians on a daily basis are not allowed to leave his committee because a Democrat sponsored those bills. And that is not effective leadership, that is not good government, and that is something that needs to be changed in the Pennsylvania legislature. We need to have thought-provoking conversations with both sides of the aisle, right? We need to come together. Another thing, you know, in a lot of the committees, the committee makeup is staggering, say 15 majority members, 9 minority. There's no real way to get general consensus among members with a makeup quite like that in these committees. So we need to work together to move Pennsylvania forward, but the Democrats, as it stands right now, don't have that opportunity in a lot of committees because of politics. So that is something that I would absolutely look to change.
Thank you. Kyle, the same question to you. If elected, will you vote to continue rules that give 3 people so much authority over what proposed bills are discussed, deliberated, and brought to a vote?
I will not, because it's really not about, you know, party. It's about, that's a detriment to bipartisan cooperation. You know, if you have a Democrat and a Republican that come to a consensus, they come up with a good bill, you know, they get it to the point where it's ready to become law, and then the majority leader, you know, will not allow it for an up or down vote. That's just wrong, and that's really just a detriment to our democracy overall. You know, we live in a time where political discourse is just plain nasty, and that doesn't really benefit the people that we're supposed to be there to represent. We're supposed to go to Harrisburg to go and work together to solve problems that face everyday Pennsylvanians. And it just can't happen under the current rules, so no, I would not.
Thank you. Next question deals with infrastructure, and we'll start with Patrick. Kyle, I'm sorry, we'll start with Kyle. I caught myself, thanks. Pennsylvania's infrastructure is deteriorating, in many cases downright dangerous. So where is the state's infrastructure on your priority list?
It's probably number 2 right after fair funding for education. We've all driven on our state highways, we've all driven on our roads, and there really isn't any excuse for the condition that they are in. We saw back in October that a bridge in Pittsburgh collapsed into a ravine that it went over. And that's just, it's a lack of leadership on a statewide level for way too long. This isn't a problem that was created overnight, and it's not going to be a problem that's solved overnight, but we need to come together and create bipartisan solutions to our infrastructure issues. But it's not only our roads and our bridges. We see all the time, I deal with it every day, stormwater issues in the city of Scranton, and I know that it's up and down the valley. We haven't properly funded stormwater projects. We haven't properly dealt with that, and that is also something that needs to be done. Also, there are members that live in, or there are residents that live in more rural communities that do not have access to internet, and that also needs to be a part of the infrastructure discussion.
Thank you. Patrick, the same question to you. Where is the state's infrastructure on your priority list?
It's very high. I don't know if I'll put my priority list in order, but it's very high. And, you know, as Kyle said, roads, bridges, but not just that, broadband, as he alluded to. There's Pennsylvanians all over in big swaths of this Commonwealth that have no access to broadband. So that is a major part of infrastructure. That is a key part of infrastructure, but also social infrastructure. Making sure that we have the social benefits for individuals to live and work in Pennsylvania on a daily basis through our transit systems, to get to work on time, to make sure that they have access to the Colts bus system, right, on roads that they could get to work in on time, to get there, to provide for their families, are all key issues that we have to address. Luckily, there's going to be a lot of money coming to the Commonwealth through the bipartisan infrastructure package that passed through Congress, but it's a matter of we get the money. We saw it through the American Rescue Plan. I believe there's about $9 billion that the Republicans are holding on to right now that could be going in to Pennsylvania and onto the streets of Pennsylvania. We need to make sure when this money is hitting, this infrastructure money from the federal government, that we are using it for in the best case scenarios that we possibly could to better our communities, whether that be roads, bridges, stormwater management, access to broadband, or other social infrastructure issues.
Thanks. And so I did have a follow-up, and so I'm going to go there. Kyle, where will the necessary funds come from to address the infrastructure revitalization?
So first off, we need to properly manage the funds we have now. We have one of the highest gas taxes in the state, and that's supposed to go towards funding our roads and bridges. But unfortunately, it just gets into the black hole down in Harrisburg and just disappears into the abyss without any actual results for the residents of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Patrick, would you like to add to your answer?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree, as I said earlier, you know, and you look at, if you ever take the Pennsylvania Turnpike Northeast Extension from Scranton to Philadelphia, you know, it used to be about $3 or whatever it is. Now you're taking a round trip for $40. And where is that money going? And it's not about the money we have, it's about what are we doing with it? Where is it going? And how can we best invest it in our Commonwealth?
Thanks. So the next question, we'll start with Patrick, and this is on school districts and funding for education. Pennsylvania's Constitution states, "The General Assembly shall provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education to serve the needs of the Commonwealth." However, the limited implementation of the state's fair funding law makes this hard, if not impossible, to accomplish. According to the Scranton Times, both of you favor fair funding for school districts. Based on that, please tell us what your plan is to accomplish this, and tell us where the money will come from to ensure fair funding for school districts.
Right. Well, thank you for that question. And I believe, well, first and foremost, I hope the lawsuit turns out in the favor of the fair funding formula, the lawsuit that's going through the courts right now. But as it stands right now, you know, I believe that we were put in a very terrible position from 2010 to 2014 when Tom Corbett was governor, and he slashed funding across the Commonwealth for all those years. So we started from a lower point than we should have on funding, right? But we need to find innovative new ways to make sure that our children are getting the education they deserve and need in schools that are up to par to be able to teach them, and have the ability for our teachers to be able to make sure that our children are getting a 21st century education, whether that be through a severance tax, you know, and they talked about in the Times where the severance tax was one possible way, but I know in order to get a severance tax through in the last iteration, Governor Wolf, to try to appease the Republicans to an extent, said he would put all severance tax money towards infrastructure. I'd like to pare that back and make sure that the severance tax, maybe $1.7 billion that we're losing out on, being the only state without a severance tax, could go directly in to fairly funding our education system.
Thank you, Patrick. Kyle, the same question to you.
Could you repeat the question again?
So please tell us what your plan is to accomplish fair funding, and tell us where the money will come from to ensure fair funding.
So for too long, the legislators failed to live up to the standard by enabling a funding system where students who need the most get the least. We have to change the way we fund public education. We need to give children the resources. I know Pat mentioned Governor Corbett's time, but it also goes farther back than that. It goes back to when Governor Ridge was still in office. The state failed to make its contribution into pension systems. From about 1998, I believe it started, to present, the state hasn't made its required pension contribution, which has jacked up the price of pensions for local school districts. When I was on the school board before I was on the school board in 2011, the pension contribution from the Scranton School District was $3.5 million a year into the pension system. But because of a lack of the state, because the state lacking to properly put its share into pension systems, that has skyrocketed to about $35 million today. And that's something that gets pushed on to local taxpayers. There's a bunch of ways we could fund, actually fund fair funding. One is shifting it away. We need to change our corporate tax structure. We have one of the highest corporate taxes in the state, and we could actually lower that and achieve more revenue by closing the Delaware loophole, which allows corporations to have a P.O. box in Wilmington, but operate mostly in Pennsylvania and avoid paying taxes.
Thank you. I was going to ask a question about the Delaware loophole and the corporate tax, and both of you have already addressed that, so I may just skip that question. And I apologize to everybody for how warm it is in this room. It's not under my control.
I thought it was just me.
No, I know, and you guys have jackets on and everything. So the next question deals with minimum wage. Most families are dual earner, with two parents working for pay outside the home. The second most common family type is a single female-headed household. The majority of workers earning the minimum wage are women. If elected, will you fight to increase the state's minimum wage from the current $7.25 an hour? And if so, what minimum wage would you propose? If not, raising it, then why not? And so we will start with Kyle.
So I'm absolutely in favor of raising the minimum wage. I would like to get to $15 an hour. I don't think it's responsible to do that in one shot, but it should be phased in from $7.25 up to $15 over 3 years. Our community was built on the middle class, and it just seems like they're always forgotten. But on top of the minimum wage, we also must provide equal pay for equal work. I think at the moment, women make about 83 cents to the dollar for every male, and I just think that's wrong. If you're doing the same job, you should be getting equal pay. So yes, I would raise the minimum wage.
Thank you, Kyle. Patrick, the question to you. So would you fight to increase the wage from $7.25? If so, what would you want to bring it up to? And if not, why not?
No, I absolutely would. I think, the minimum wage right now being at $7.25 an hour is downright draconian. I think it's ridiculous that no one could live on $7.25 an hour. And of course, to get to that $15 is a good place to get to. I would like to see it a little less phased in because real people are having real issues right now, and they can't wait for Pennsylvania to decide we're going to phase it in. And so I believe that, if that had to happen, if that's the only way to get Republican support, then I would go there. But I would love to see the minimum wage up around what our neighboring states are at right now already. We are so far below our neighboring states right now, and we need to get up there. People are not able to put food on their table. Everyday people in our area are not able to do the things they need to do for their families because they simply cannot afford it due to the minimum wage. And of course, equal pay for equal work, it should be so standard, but it's such an issue that, as Kyle said, 83 cents on the dollar a woman makes that a man makes. That is absolutely ludicrous. So we need to find ways I don't know if it has to be through mandates in the state government. I don't know exactly how we go about that. I don't know what I don't know, but I'd be really willing to take a look at it as soon as I got there. But we need to make sure that if you are doing this job, the same job, you are getting paid the exact same that your counterpart is. So absolutely raise the minimum wage. Absolutely make sure that our women are making exactly the same amount as our men are for the same jobs. Let's get into the 21st century.
Thank you. The pandemic has been especially difficult for working mothers and children. The impact of the pandemic on women and their families, the nation's economy, highlights the need for numerous public policies that support women and children. So, we had childcare is the backbone of the economy, and the pandemic helped to highlight that. We had a childcare crisis before the pandemic that was made worse by the pandemic. According to Child Care Aware of America, the price of center-based child care for an infant is more than the cost of housing in the Northeast. In addition, the price of child care is more than tuition at four-year public universities. If elected, will you work to enact legislation that builds a stable, affordable, accessible, and quality child care system? If yes, what role would the state government play in creating and supporting that child care system? If no, why not? And so, Patrick, will you work to enact legislation that builds a stable, affordable, accessible, and quality child care system?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Head Start is such an integral part of our of what we need to do. Having Head Start, universal pre-K is something that we need to have where children have a safe place to go. But we need, as a legislature, to really address the issues that are facing our constituents and making sure that our mothers are able to go to work knowing that their child is being cared for is so utterly important. There's so many issues that COVID has exacerbated. This is one of the key issues, along with one of my key issues, I don't know if you've seen me talk about it, but addiction and mental health have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially when you think about mothers who don't know, because they're making $7.25 an hour. They don't know where they're getting their food from. They have no child care to speak of. And they're dealing with mental health issues inside of their house and all this stuff that was exacerbated by COVID. We need to address all of it, but the legislature needs to play a key role in addressing child care especially for our most vulnerable populations. You know, you might be lucky enough to send your kid to someone's house to watch them. A lot of people aren't. So we need to make sure that we are there for those people day in and day out, and that's what this legislature needs to do.
Same question to you, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Pat that, you know, we absolutely need to fix the child care crisis in this country and in this state. My wife and I, you know, we're lucky to have flexible schedules and have a support system around us that's able to help us out, but it is still hard. I can't even imagine, you know, a single mother that has to choose between when they send their kid to daycare and then that daycare shuts down because of a COVID outbreak or a lack of proper staffing, and having to make that decision. I also believe it's not necessarily just child care. I think we have to start calling it early childhood education. I don't believe that we should be waiting until 5 years old to begin to educate our kids, because all we're doing there is creating more and more of a gap between haves and have-nots. So we have to expand early childhood education to give children, you know, a level playing field. We also need universal pre-K to really hammer home just the basics. I know that there was a forum last week on literacy held here at the university, and that's an issue that you have to dive into from an early age, and give children the tools to be able to be successful as they work their way through the educational system and then also in life.
Thank you. The next question deals with paid leave, and we'll start with Kyle. In 2019, President Donald Trump signed a national law providing 12 weeks of parental leave for civilian federal employees. Last month, Maryland and Delaware joined 8 other states and Washington, D.C. as governments with paid family leave laws. 11 other state legislatures have introduced paid leave bills. These are both states with Republican-dominated legislatures and states with Democratic-dominated legislatures. So if elected, will you work to enact a paid leave law in Pennsylvania that covers both parental leave and sick leave? And please provide a rationale.
Absolutely. I think that's just we shouldn't be forcing either women or men back to work after the birth of a child. I think those are the greatest times of someone's life, is to bring your child home and be able to start caring for them, and to do that as a team, because me and my wife actually benefited from the law you said that Donald Trump instituted. I never thought I'd say I benefited something that Donald Trump did, but we actually did. But it's also not just about maternal leave. It's also, the family leave and the sick leave. If someone gets sick in your family, you should be able to take time off to care for them, especially, if you have a parent or another close family member that might get sick. It's important to be with them in those times. So we absolutely need to fight on the legislative side for paid sick and family medical leave.
Thank you. Patrick, the same question to you.
Yeah, it's funny. So they say Republican-controlled legislatures, Democratic-controlled legislatures. So there's them, and then there's Pennsylvania. And I think we absolutely need to fight for a paid family medical leave, sick leave for our husbands, for our wives, for the mothers, and for the fathers, to make sure, as Kyle said, those precious moments that you have, you are able to be there with your child through those moments, but more importantly, for sick leave as well, to make sure that you don't have to choose between losing your job and caring for your sick loved one, right? To make sure that it is codified that you are able to care for that loved one in their toughest times, and you are not susceptible to being fired for doing so, right? To be able to have that peace of mind as you're dealing with some of the most wonderful times in your life, but also some of the most terrible times in your life. Both of those instances, to make sure that you're able to be there with your family through those is so important to keeping the family structure intact, and that is something that we absolutely need to do.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Patrick. And this deals with the recent leak of a potential Supreme Court decision. If the fundamental constitutional right to choose when to become a mother is taken away by the U.S. Supreme Court, and states gain the authority to ban abortion, the educational, financial, and social gains women have made over the last 50 years would become null and void. Currently, there's a joint resolution bill, which means a proposed amendment to the state constitution here in Pennsylvania. It's both in the House and in the Senate, and the bill states, the policy of Pennsylvania is to protect the life of every unborn child from conception to birth. Nothing in this Constitution grants or secures any right relating to abortion. Pennsylvania already has numerous regulations and restrictions on abortion. So I have a series of questions, and I really just want yes/no answers, and then we'll come back at the end and give you time to expand on that. So Patrick first. Do you support or oppose Pennsylvania lawmakers placing additional legal restrictions on abortion?
Oppose.
Kyle?
Oppose.
Do you support or oppose Pennsylvania lawmakers legally restricting the use of intrauterine devices?
Oppose.
Oppose.
Do you support or oppose Pennsylvania lawmakers legally restricting medical pregnancy termination?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. Do you support or oppose Pennsylvania lawmakers legally restricting medical pregnancy termination?
Oppose.
Oppose.
Do you support or oppose Pennsylvania lawmakers legally restricting in vitro fertilization?
Oppose.
Oppose.
Do you support or oppose Pennsylvania lawmakers maintaining privacy between a woman and her health care providers to determine her birth control plan and the course of her pregnancy?
Support.
Support.
And here's the last one. Is the following a violation of the separation of church and state doctrine, which is established in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution? So is this a violation of that? state lawmakers putting into law the position that life begins at conception or some other lawmaker-defined time?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it does violate the First Amendment. I have to figure out the question I just asked. Okay. So having gone through that long list of things that we see happening in the state proposed amendment that's being discussed currently in the state legislature, do you want to add, and Patrick, you will start this, add to comment on the current status?
Sure, I gotta get my mind right after that lightning round.
Sorry.
Mental pretzel. But, so I used the word draconian earlier. I should have kept it for this. It is completely outrageous, not just the leak, but what they are planning to do with Roe versus Wade. Taking away a woman's right to choose is so baffling to me. I almost don't even have words to say about it, right? You know, a woman's right to choose is a woman's right to choose. And not only that, but if this is where it begins, where does it go to next? When they are stripping rights away from us on a daily basis. So we need to really nip this in the bud. And in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you know, you have a lot of extremists in that body, right, who are putting forth these joint resolutions, these bills, trying to legislate a woman's body. And it's sick and it's disgusting, and I'm completely opposed to, and I would be opposed to anything that came across my desk or came onto the House floor that was looking to legislate a woman's body. But I really believe that as disgusting and as draconian and as sick as that is, it makes me very nervous about how the floodgates open up as to what's going to come next, as to what right they're going to try to strip away next, because if this is the beginning, it won't be the only thing. As soon as they get a taste of it, it's going to start coming, and I'm really fearful for my sister, my nieces, and our future generations as to what they're going to deal with. If this is the beginning, where does it go next? So absolutely opposed.
Thank you. Kyle, the same question to you, which is just, do you want to expand on your answers?
So, yeah, I mean, Pat's right. You know, it is draconian. It is disgusting, you know, what is happening in terms of Roe v. Wade. You know, being pro-choice doesn't make you pro-abortion, but at the same time, I think when you label somebody as, when you have a pro-life movement, I don't think that's a fair characterization of them. They're not pro-life, they're pro-birth. Because every policy that comes after life, you know, we talked about the minimum wage. We talked about underfunding our poorest school districts. We talked about universal pre-K, access to affordable childcare. Those are programs that are actually, you would consider pro-life. But you have a pro-life movement who doesn't think that those should be put into place to give families the support they need. From a healthcare perspective, it is absolutely wrong to try to legislate what happens between a woman and her doctor. You know, I think we need to provide access for women's health on those issues, not detract from it.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Kyle. And this is about your top legislative priority. So if you are elected, what is the top legislative priority you will attempt to accomplish during your 2-year term?
First would be, it's absolutely just fair funding for schools. You know, I've reiterated it over and over again, but if we're not giving, if we're putting kids in a situation where those that come from the least, or that come from the worst economic situations get the least, we're not creating a future for our children. But at the same time, you know, you also mentioned legislative rules. We need to change the way the legislator functions, not only in terms of what bills come to the floor, but how the legislator deals with its financial situation in-house. For example, the legislator, I think the last I saw, has a surplus of over $200 million that they keep. And, you know, the excuse for that is, if there's a government shutdown, if there's a budget stalemate, the legislator could still function. Do your job, get that done, you know, and it shouldn't have to be. You shouldn't get a budget done. You shouldn't have to have a surplus there for as a rainy day fund. It really becomes a slush fund. We also have to increase transparency in terms of how legislative offices expend their money. We have to get more detail oriented on that front. I also believe we have to ban the use of per diems and government expense, mileage expense and housing expense. I think legislators get paid a pretty good salary, and I think that's more than enough for them to do their job.
Thank you. The same question to you, Patrick.
Sure. So fair funding of our school districts is obviously a key priority for anyone in our area. It's so super important to make sure that our children have the best chance of succeeding in life, no matter what socioeconomic background you come from. But also we need to address the ongoing opioid and mental health crisis that is going on in our area. There's not a family in our area that hasn't dealt with the addiction crisis in one way or another. We need to make sure that we have the funding available for treatment, prevention, community-based interventions, and make sure that not only do we help the person to get from a life of active addiction like I was for so many years into a life of recovery like I am now for the past 7.5 years, but also we need to make sure that we take care of the family members that dealt with it as well. We need to make sure we take care of the senior citizens, the grandparents right now who are taking care of their grandchildren because that grandchild's mother or father died of a heroin overdose. And they don't have the financial capabilities to take care of that child, but there they are caring for them every day with love and compassion. We need to make sure we take care of our seniors in that way. So really the behavioral health as a whole is something that I will be hyper-focused on to make sure that we have the access and the necessary access to care that so many families across the continuum have. And also, make sure that once these individuals get into a life of recovery, they have the wherewithal to be able to get mentored and to get back into the workforce, back onto the tax rolls, not be in a life of recovery but not able to pay their bills. We need to make sure that these individuals are mentored and they have the belief in themselves to get back into the workforce like I did when I didn't believe I could amount to anything, got back into that workforce, made a career, made a life for myself. And we need to do that for every individual in our community.
Thank you. With that, we have just enough time for closing statements. And so we, at the beginning, selected, and Patrick, you get to go first with your closing statement. Thank you.
Should I begin?
You can begin. Thank you.
All right. Now, once again, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you for everyone in attendance here tonight. I believe that I am the most qualified candidate for this position. I believe that I have a breadth of knowledge from both personal experience I understand the issues that are facing everyday people in our communities. I've dealt with them myself. I've dealt with being at the bottom of the barrel and having to try to get back up out of it. My family has seen it, right? And I believe that having that empathy that comes with it, that understanding of real issues that Pennsylvanians face is so utterly important to have in a state legislator. Also, my career and my background, my professional background, is so important in having dealt with this legislature for the past 7 years. And I'm not doing this to get a job. I left my career in order to do this. I left my career for a belief in our community, a belief to serve. I decided that this is where I needed to be right now to take this opportunity. And I had to take a really, really big chance on doing this because of how much I believe in this community. From the values that my mother sitting here instilled in me and my father, who isn't here with us anymore, died of cancer in 2011, they instilled in me the belief in this community, to leave this community a better place than how you found it. For so long, I wasn't able to do that, but this community stood by my side and lifted me up when I couldn't. Now I'm in a position where I could lift this community back up and stand by its side and help it on a daily basis, and I will work every single day to make sure that's exactly what I do.
Thank you, Patrick Flynn. Kyle.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Dr. Harris, the Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. I've been on the front lines fighting for this community for the last 8 years. First, as a school director, I saw firsthand the negative impacts of the lack of fair funding. The decisions of whether you lay off staff or, you cut programs. I believe children should have everything they need to be successful, including art classes, music classes, library services. I've also seen firsthand the negative impact that state law could have on municipalities. I brought up the way municipalities are governed. ATV legislation, firework legislation, things we've been dealing with on the ground that we're trying to get a handle of, that state law just doesn't give you the tools to actually combat those issues. In terms of our infrastructure, we have a stormwater management problem in this city, and we need the funding and to actually take care of those issues and address the issues that our residents are facing. Same with the roads, same with the bridges. Serving on city council the last 5 years hasn't necessarily been the easiest. There's been tough days. But at the end of the day, this year we left Act 47 for the first time in 30 years, and I'm proud to have played a part in that. But now we need to make sure we have state laws to keep us out of Act 47, not only to keep us out of Act 47, but to allow this community to thrive and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Donahue. So I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Reminder, May 10th, tomorrow, is the last day you can apply for a mail-in ballot if you're looking to vote through mail. The primary is on May 17th, so please get to the polls on May 17th. Hopefully the weather will be good. And again, thank you so much for joining the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County this evening and the University's Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service, which is a tongue-tire. Thank you very much.
Considerations for debate watching. Debates are an important way for voters to learn more about candidates and issues before the election, so that they can cast an informed vote. However, you may watch a debate and still not get answers to the questions you have about the candidates and issues. You can get the most out of a debate by thinking about the issues and candidates in advance, and by continuing to research the issues and the candidates after the debate. Learn about the candidates and their backgrounds. Visit the candidates' website. Find out what the important campaign issues are. Decide what issues are most important to you. Open your mind to new information and solutions regardless of party line.